Now, for a clear background to the conflict between the rival PDP camps, we are now being joined by George Turnah, a chieftain of the opposition party from Bayelsa State. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsday.
Thank you, Awan Tokwe. Good afternoon. It's good to be with you this afternoon.
Okay, so I'd like us to, delve into history a bit and talk about the fallout from the 2023 general elections. How did that contribute to the show of shame that played out yesterday? And in retrospect, how could that have been better managed?
Let me start by offering apologies on behalf of the party and all of us, of course, who represent the PDP, to Nigerians, because what happened at our national secretariat yesterday was truly shameful and something that we are not proud of. How did we get to this point? You see, laws are meant to make man good. If you jettison a rule of law, what you have is exactly what happened at the PDP secretariat yesterday. Anarchy, state of anarchy. We had a build-up to national convention. When NEC approved the national convention, we're all happy. And we thought that the umpire, the NWC, will manage and midwife the process in a manner that all parties, that they are fair to all parties and provide enabling environment for members of these parties to, of course, express and advance their ambition. Rightly so. But all that followed led to members approaching the court. And court gave judgment. 2 judgments of the Federal High Court say don't take any steps. INEC don't observe, don't allow, don't participate, don't even recognize any outcome in the event that they go ahead. We thought that a party that ordinarily should be governed by the rule of law will abide by the decision of the Federal High Court. Especially that the party took steps and appealed the judgment of Honorable Justice James Omotosho. When you have appealed, when you have gone before the Court of Appeal, when parties, activate their right to appeal, and you are now before the Court of Appeal, that alone, it's even enough for all parties to have maintained the status quo and allow the Court of Appeal to even determine the matter one way or the other. It is the disobedience to valid and subsisting order of court, and that they went ahead to Ibadan for a social gathering and returned to Abuja to want to impose, themselves on the party, that created all of those confusion. It is always important that leaders, political leaders especially, conduct themselves and activities of the affairs of their offices, even if it's a political party, in line with the rule of law, your constitution, the Constitution of Nigeria, the Electoral Act, and guidelines. It's always important so that we avoid this kind of situation where it is embarrassing. And let me just say this. I listened to one of your political analyst, Dr. Sam Amadi, fine gentleman, and I respect him all the time. But there's a view he shared that because there was an Ibadan High Court that made an ex parte order, and so the doctrine of last in line, meant that the ex parte ruling of the Ibadan High Court, had paved way or legitimized the convention. with all due respect, that is not the position of the law. When you have conflicting orders from courts of coordinate jurisdiction, it is the order that is first in line that stands, because the law never anticipates that when you lose a case in a federal high court, you go to shop in another either federal high court or state high court on the same subject matter. But that position of the law is when a higher court, appellate court, for instance, if the court of appeal makes a decision today, right, and the same court of appeal in the same subject matter changes its position tomorrow, that latest decision, the last in line, becomes what lower courts will follow. That is what the law is. It's not about when courts of coordinate jurisdiction, this one make it, this one make it, and then you now say, oh, this one last in line and follow. That is what created all of this confusion, and it is sad that we have gotten to this point. It would not have cost us anything to do the right thing. It would not have cost us anything to follow our rules, follow our constitution. What were the issues? By our practice, before you get to National Convention, you conduct what we call 3 ad hoc delegate congress. When you elect those 3 ad hoc delegates at the ward level, they now form the delegates to elect ward delegates, ward ESCO, executives. When you elect the ward executives, together with the ad hoc delegate, they move up to elect the local government executives. Then the local government executives, together with the ward executives and the ad hoc delegates, they move up to elect the state executives. Like that, the state executive and the local government will move up to elect the zonal executives. Then zonal executive, the state executives, and local government chairmen will now move up to elect the national leadership at National Convention. And we said that, look, 14 states had no congresses, no executives. 14 states. And we said, look, we want to run elections. We are popular in these 14 states. Can we conduct congresses so we don't disenfranchise these 14 states? They agreed. NEC approved at our 102nd NEC meeting. NEC gave approval for the conduct of these congresses in Ebonyi, in Anambra, Southeast, Ekiti, and several other states. The national chairman, His Excellency Damagu, together with the national secretary, Sam Anyanwu, gave a notice to INEC for the conduct of those congresses in the affected states. From nowhere, the national chairman, as he then was, wrote to INEC alone, postponing congresses in some of those states. Cross River, Ebonyi, Anambra, Enugu, Ekiti, and some other states like that. Then the National Secretary wrote a counter letter to INEC insisting that those congresses must go on. That was the beginning of this crisis. The confusion continued until we approached the court. We said, look, INEC is the registrar of political parties and the regulator of political parties. So we asked the Federal High Court to determine whether constitutionally and by the Electoral Act, INEC's job is just to sit and be looking at political parties and their managers, run parties unconstitutionally, run democratically, and all of that. And the court gave us a sound judgment and said, no, INEC has responsibility to oversight the affairs of these political parties and ensure internal democracy in the running and management of the affairs of these political parties, and also that political parties must stay with their constitutions. You have made a constitution for yourself. You must govern yourself in line with those constitutions. And
allow me to interrupt you, George Turner. Thank you so much for giving us this background. Yes. I think we understand the context in which this crisis was formulated. Yeah. But speaking specifically about Bayelsa State, what role has the governor, the former governor, Seriake Dixon, played in either, resolving or exacerbating this current friction that is going on within the chapter of the state?
Yes, thank you. His Excellency Senator Dixon has been very involved. If you recall, in the heat of when this crisis, when we had the National Secretary issue, there was a joint meeting of PDP governors, serving and former. And in that meeting, attended by Minister Anyesom Wike, there was a committee, that was put forward. That is the Bukola Saraki-led committee. Senator Dixon was a member of that committee. That committee gave far-reaching recommendations that would have resolved all of these issues, including some congresses that were disputed, the South Congress, which the committee, recommended that should be upheld, and all of that. Again, when the BOT met in the build-up of all of this, in fact, the heat of this convention crisis, and the committees were set up, you saw Senator Saraki Dixon in those meetings. So he's been playing that role, working with leaders, to see that we get out of this quagmire. But the challenge we have, when political parties are made up of politicians who have interests. Politics is played along interest line, no doubt about that. So when you have a convergence of people from different background and views and thoughts, they have their interests. So when your interests align, you form a clique, right? And it is struggle for the control of structure and power, to apply scarce resources for the benefit of the common man. So all of these struggles, you can't take them away. But where you have a challenge is when the umpire becomes a party, an interested party. When in this case, the umpire became neck deep and soaked in ambition. The umpire here is the National Working Committee. They ought to provide a level playing field for everybody. But we were looking for expression of interest and nomination form. We didn't find any. They printed one form and gave to them. So if you look at the outcome of the Congress, a deputy national chairman, South, His Excellency Adapaja, say he's now national secretary. Why would you have all this crisis? If you knew you had interest to be national secretary, resign. Take yourself away from the umpire so that you can operate from a point of neutrality. The financial secretary came today now that is deputy national chairman, South. So they threw themselves deep in ambition and they themselves were the umpire. Just imagine that INEC as umpire wants to conduct election and our law says that all presidential aspirants should go and pick form from INEC. And you hear that INEC have printed one form and give to President Tinubu, print one form, give to Senate President Godswill Akpabio, print one form, give to Speaker Tajuddin. This country will boil. That is exactly the scenario we found ourselves in the PDP that led us to this situation. And the courts tried to intervene, they jettisoned. BOT committee came up with recommendation. Their own BOT that they set up. The committee came up with recommendation, suspend this convention, let's reunite the party, all suspensions within NWC, set them aside, everybody should come as one so that we can rebuild. They jettisoned it because they have personal ambition and they couldn't take themselves away from the separate, being interested parties and being in the umpire. And we have all this crisis. So Senator Dixon and other leaders, foreign leaders that we have who are interested in the growth and survival of this party have done their best. And they keep doing their best. But, of course, the leadership at the time, neck deep in ambition, couldn't understand that they had a sacred duty to serve the people and then put their own personal interests aside. And that is why we found ourselves in this situation.
Now, thank you very much, for setting that background for us. But in the midst of this confusion, I'm wondering to what extent does the Wike faction have the constitutional authority within the PDP to suspend the national leadership, and some other members?
No. The people get it wrong. There is nothing like Wike faction. where Minister Nwike is not a member of the governing authority in the party, the working committee. Now it is the working committee that issued a notice for BOT and NEC meeting, 103rd meeting to hold yesterday. The national secretary of this party, Senator Samuel Anyango, who has the constitutional responsibility to issue out notice for every statutory meeting of this party, issued notice for BOT meeting and NEC meeting yesterday. We were already at the party secretariat. We were done. We started with a meeting of state chairmen. We had 19 states, 19 state chairmen. We had a meeting with the national chairman, Mohammed Abdulrahman. You know, we finished that meeting. We were in the NWC hall for caucus meeting. Our BOT members were already seated at the NEC. I think the challenge they had was when they heard the caliber of persons that were already seated in the NEC hall, the caliber of members of our BOT. I'm sure they never expected that those level of number of caliber of BOT members would turn up for that meeting. And that was how, you know, they came in. Of course, the videos are everywhere. You saw how they came in. From what you just played before this conversation, you heard the learned Essayant, you know, say that we chase them away. There's only one process outside the law to chase people away, and that is violence and thuggery. So they have owned up that they were the ones who committed, you know, all of those shameful acts yesterday at the secretariat. But we apologize on their behalf and on behalf of all of them. But again, they have all been expelled now because we met yesterday. Outside all the things they did, the BOT meeting went on successful. We had the 103rd meeting, and far-reaching decisions, you know, were reached in that meeting, and a number of people were expelled.
Mr. Turnah, we also know that, you know, people of high caliber within the PDP, we also know that they attended the convention in Ibadan. And they also took decisions to expel the people that met yesterday.
No, there was no convention.
Expel them in
Sorry
return.
To cut you
it's
in.
a bit confusing. You know, but I'm just wondering, you know, in the midst of all this confusion, who really is in charge of the PDP? Who has the legal standing to be in charge of the PDP?
You talk about leaders, you know, at Ibadan. That was not the PDP convention in any way.
So what was it?
Look at it this way. The chairman, you know, it was a social gathering of party members. I admit that they were members of our party who gathered in Ibadan. But it was nothing more than a social gathering. You can't put something on nothing. There must be a foundation. Of course, you didn't see INEC there. And INEC didn't go there, not because they had a choice not to be there, but they were obeying a subsisting order of court. And that order of court also goes to, state that whatever outcome, in the event that they go ahead with such gathering, don't recognize. So that was not a PDP convention. Now, the chairman of our National Convention Planning Committee, as approved by NEC, Governor Fintiri, you saw him washed off his hands and left the scene. When he left, they were now looking for his deputy to step in. His deputy is the governor of Osun State. He didn't go to that convention. His deputy governor was there earlier, represented him. As at the time they were looking for the deputy governor to come and step in as deputy chairman of the convention to continue to preside over the convention, he himself too had left the venue because he couldn't sit to preside over an illegality. That is why you saw that Senator Ben Obi, who in any case was not appointed by NEC as secretary of convention committee. The secretary appointed by NEC was Governor Peter Mba, who left the party while preparing for convention. Senator Ben Obi was brought from nowhere and named as secretary. He became the one who presided over that social gathering and even did the return of whoever, you know, now claimed that he was elected. It is only a returning officer by our guideline that can make returns in conventions. So tell me, even by their own standard, assuming we want to concede that was a convention. By their own conduct, there was no valid convention. You know, there was no valid convention. Then if you talk about leaders, tell me one former chairman, national chairman of this party that was at that social gathering in Ibadan. That day I flew from Abuja to Port Harcourt with Prisuche Secondus on the same flight. He was not at Ibadan. Tell me one former national chairman of this party that was there at Ibadan. You see, so, and then yesterday, you know, when they came back, they issued a notice. Oh, they were inviting everybody, former president, former this one. If PDP had former angels, they would have mentioned angels, that they will all be in the party secretary. How many notable, reasonable, respected leaders of this party did you see yesterday accompanying Turaki to that secretariat? They were accompanied by thugs.
George Turnah.
And our two governors.
George Turnah, that is the jam question.
One leader.
We're asking you the questions today, but unfortunately we're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. Chieftain of the opposition party from Bayelsa State's PDP, George Turnah, thank you for joining us.